Hi, my name is Graham Leach and I have a company called Wrapped Up. We help companies provide great customer experiences, and clearly CRM plays a pretty big role within the customer experience building process. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about applying measures in CRM. We're going to talk about the rationale of measures, why we need measures, and the calculation of those measurements, the ratios and the formulas, and finally we're going to talk about applying these measures. Right, well, you might well ask, why measure in the first place? CRM systems already have standard report options, but few actually report on the real reason for implementing a CRM tool in the first place. Sales and contact measures are good, but they're hardly sufficient. They hardly justify having a CRM strategy. So I propose that we measure what you'd like to manage. So what to measure? Well, in my opinion, CRM is just part of creating great customer experiences. An underestimated group of measurements are internal CRM usage. So for example, you could have audits that track what fields or what attributes are being captured, and you can also track which ones are not being captured properly, for example. And you can also monitor which reports are being used and which aren't by certain users. The failure of CRM is often down to the fact that there's little incentive for personnel to load or upload data. When this is measured, it will improve the quality of data in your CRM system. Right, so let's have a look at some CRM measures. The first one is recency, which, as the name implies, is based on the time of the last engagement with the customer. So this could be a sales engagement, it could be an activity such as an email or a telephone call, or it might be a service case, or it could be a combination of all or some of these. So that's recency. Then you get a rate of attrition, which is the rate of customers lost per cohort, and I'm going to refer to cohorts quite often through the presentation. But a cohort is simply a group of customers from a specific time period. So they may be all customers from Q1 2003. Then we get a rate of acquisition, which is the rate of customers gained per cohort. And then we start getting into the retention rates. And the first one is the average retention rate, which is the percentage of customers retained per cohort or across a number of cohorts. Then we get a duration adjusted retention rate, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's just simply the retention rate across the cohorts with a weighted measurement. And lastly, we'll have a profit or revenue retention rate, and these are using the same measures but adding in a profit or a revenue calculation to each cohort. Great, so let's go on to the first ratio, and that's the rate of attrition. Using the table below as an example, we can see that in 1994 there were 413 customers that were lost. The number at the beginning of the year was 700, and the attrition rate is therefore 59%, which is 413 divided by 700. In 1995 there were 563 lost, but we lost some from two different cohorts. So you had a 1993 cohort and you had a 1994 cohort, and we get in the 93 cohort we had 287 minus 166, and in the 94 cohort we had 750 minus 308, and there were 1037 at the beginning of the year. So the average retention rate is 54.3%. In other words, the rate of attrition is the number lost as a percentage of the number at the start. Right, and the rate of acquisition is based on a similar format. It's simply the number of customers gained as a percentage of the number at the start. So in 1995 there were 800 new customers and 1037 at the start of the year, and the rate of acquisition is therefore 77.1%, which is 800 divided by 1037. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. Right, let's have a look at retention rates. These are more important ratios for CRM practitioners. And the simple ratio for the retention rate is the number of customers retained as a percentage of the number at the start of the cohort. So the straight retention rate for customers from the 1993 cohort during the year of 1995 is 57.8%, and that's 166 divided by 287. And similarly for customers from the 94 cohort, the ratio is 41.1%. So that's a pretty straightforward ratio. Next up we have the average rate of retention, and that's simply the average retention across the different cohorts. So in the previous slide we had a retention rate for the 93 cohort and a separate one for 94, and what we do now is average them across the two cohorts. So we take the 57.8%, we add it to the 41.1%, and we divide it by 2, as we're only using two cohorts. Clearly if we used more cohorts we'd be dividing by 3, 4, 5, or whatever the case might be. Right, so now on to probably the most important ratio within the whole CRM environment, and that's a duration adjusted rate of retention. This rate accounts for the changes over time of the firm's rate of efficacy. So we first identify the number of repeat customers per cohort as a percentage of the total. So in the table on the left below we can see that from the 1993 cohort there were 166 remaining customers, which is 35% of the total number of customers remaining in the year of 1995. The total number of customers in the year of 95 was 474, which is 166 plus 308. So the duration adjusted retention rate in 1995 is 57.8%, going back to previous slides, where we identified the retention rate for that specific cohort for the time period of 1995, and we multiply that by the 35% that we've just calculated, and similarly we do that for the 1994 cohort, which is 41.1% multiplied by the 65%, so we get a figure of 46.9% as a duration adjusted retention rate, which is a more accurate measure than a simple average. And next we have a look at building in a value measure into our ratios. And by adding in a profit or a revenue component to the measurements, you can analyze the real value of the retention rather than a simple numeric number of customers. So this is a worthwhile exercise, as not all customers are alike in the value that they hold to your business. So of course you can drill into segments and you can match different profiles to get all kinds of insight, but that starts falling outside the scope of this presentation. But safe to say, all that you'll be doing is applying a profit or a revenue element to the same ratios and formulas that we have applied in the previous slides. And finally, it's one thing having the measures, but you also need to apply them. So we now have measures in place that we can track the efficacy of our CRM strategy and system. But having the data is all good and well, but now you need to look at correlations and trends that led to the causes of the symptoms in the first place. And this is where you're going to get the real value out of these ratios and your CRM system. And you can now address when the company is vulnerable, rather than trying to identify when the customer is vulnerable and it's already too late. And that's my closing line. So thanks for your time, and mail me if you have any queries or suggestions at Graham, Graeme at raptup.co.za. Thank you and goodbye.